Good morning. Yes, good morning, folks. The digital and the spiritual. I did take a week off last week. I've been doing my videos once a week. Very excited to be here. I have a music channel. I'm a music producer, and everything's bite-sized. And that whole push in the world to keep people's attention span to 60 seconds or less. Even I have to abide a little. Actually, it's quite funny because my music channel, I've got quite good following on different channels, but my Instagram, I only recently started and I've got 145 followers. And one thing I do is totally rebel. Basically, in all the recommendations, I've watched marketing courses and it's like, keep it, bite-sized. And I'm like, bugger that, I've got stuff to say. Anyway. So my videos all over the place, 1 minute, 3 minute, 25 minute, and I even get the warning, we're not going to show it to non-followers, you've done it too long. Anyway, 145 followers on my music channel on Instagram, and I got 17,000 views last month, so I'm a little happy about that. I don't want to tell you why I took the break. When I started this channel, it was kind of years in getting ready. The timing wasn't right to share the experience that I had, this awakening that was very, very distinct if one looks at all of the claims of what awakening is these days. And I decided I didn't want my channel to sit there, so I did some sort of small boosts on YouTube, paid boosts. And anyway, one video got really kind of targeted, and the ad was disapproved under the shocking content. Now, basically, I followed that up, and I surprisingly spoke to a human at Google, and they watched 5 minutes. They said it's clearly not shocking. They promised me to get back to me the next day, and the next day came, and the ticket was closed. They had disappeared off the face of the earth. I had no way of getting back in. So what I did, I thought, well, I've got no way to deal with this. Let's re-upload the video and advertise again. Disapproved. And then 10 days later, my entire Google advert account is blocked, which means I can't even fulfill my obligations for the artists releasing under my label. For that's part of the promotion plan. Anyway, so that's ongoing. And I guess I took it as a sign to leave YouTube for more ordinary things like music. The thing I would mention, though, is that if they are blocking it or taking it down based on this bogus request, which may be not bogus according to Google, is they're starting to touch on freedom of speech. And Google, as I understand it, is an American company. So they're playing with fire a bit there. I don't have a lawyer, but to take someone's content down because it's shocking freedom of speech. Anyway, so that's where I took a week off, and I've decided to concentrate on Instagram basically. So here I am, and maybe that's enough about that. So today I wanted to talk about I don't know what to call it quite yet. By the time you see this, I'll have a nice title. But I wanted to talk about the connections between the spiritual realm and the technological realm. And I guess I'll start in quite a strange place. When I started doing research, look, I just felt there was something wrong with the world, and I had different periods in my life, and I called them research raves, where I just was like all day just reading, researching. Then towards the end of those phases, each time what would happen is I'd get overwhelmed and I'd walk away. But I think it was 2016 where this time I promised myself I would not walk away. And I was looking into health, into politics, into the Illuminati, into all of these different things, and realizing I knew nothing. What I believed was just not true. I'm sure some can relate to this, but I didn't know that this was in itself a gateway. Now, what a gateway is when one particular application to one area can lead you all the way to waking up in the transcendental, authentic sense, the one that really matters, basically. So what occurred was one area I touched on that really was spooky was as I learned more about microwave radiation, Wi-Fi, and how it can influence our bodies, that we're bioelectric first primarily. I began to start to be led down the path of mind influence through the microwaves. And what was spooky, not just about the research, was what began to happen in my personal life. Lots of strange things started to happen around me. And I'm not sure whether I want to get into all of the different kind of things, but let's just say I started to get paranoid. And basically, I came to the conclusion. I will say that there was a moment one night where I was having these strange sort of synchronicities happen whilst I was researching this spooky mind control technology stuff. And there was an evening where I don't know if I said to myself or the divine sort of spoke to me, I'm not sure, but it was a monumental situation that I remember where it was basically, Nathan, are you sure you want to go down this path and continue to research this, even if it may cost you your sanity? And I thought about it, and I felt my fears, and I said, I'm in. Well, I don't care about my life anymore. I want to know. I want to know. And that's why I say, at least from my perspective, that no one really deserves awakening. You know, people do medicine 5-6 years to get a degree, and they think they can go to a weekend retreat and get the most important gift in the known and unknown universe. Interesting. This is wonderful, by the way. Iced coffee frappe. So, I shot back. I'm like, I'm in. I don't give a, you know. It was an incredible time. It was a terrifying time. My dreams went all haywire. I had read about the possibility of being able to tehcnologies. What I should say is that, you know, if I remember correctly, a warlock is someone who's able to tap into the astral and manipulate people within dreams. I read about tehcnologies with the capacity to do the same thing. And what I can tell you is just the most outrageous, terrifying, what seemed to be extremely manipulated, dark dreams were occurring. And I was scared. I'll be honest, I was scared. And I got to the point, I had left the UK, I was in Australia, and on the day I had arrived in Australia, that night I had a dream so terrifying that I had pain in my head. I had been attacked, or at least visually within the dream. I was trying to communicate to my brother to warn him about what was occurring. But in the dream, as I tried to reach out, I realized it could endanger him. And anyway, I took this whack or this shock, and I woke up with this extreme hurting head. And it was actually part of the reason why I stopped talking to my family about what was going on for me, because I thought, if this is kind of real, and it felt very real at the time, I couldn't let it happen to anyone else. I get a bit emotional thinking about it. So I guess, long story short, you may have heard of targeted individuals, and I kind of felt that I was. What really helped me was, because as I said, I was researching a lot of this, you could say 3D stuff, but it moved into sort of, through this, you know, technological aspect, but it also moved into sort of quantum physics. It moved into the spiritual, and also because of the fear and having maybe a background with religion and sort of spirituality. I was a church minister many years ago. I was like, dude, I sort of feel connected spiritually, but I got to go way deeper because I don't know what's going on here, and I'm flipping out a bit. So this is where a lot of the spiritual research, and in fact it was certain things like the Divine Garden, and it's a book series. But there was certain, I guess, Gnosis inspired writings. The work of what's his name, Bernard Gunter, who's around today and has a website, Veil of Reality. A bit of an understanding of the hidden forces of life by Sri Aurobindo. This kept me sane, and not only kept me sane, it was the angel, like the one who was taking care of me, was just kind of keeping me from losing the plot. I mean, one little incident I had, as I won't go too into it, I couldn't sleep for 5 days. I was having the most unusual encounters with individuals that approached me. And anyway, long story short, I couldn't sleep for 5 days. And that has its own effect, but also the fear that, you know, what was kind of occurring as a possible targeted individual. So I went to the doctors, and he's like, I wanted sleeping tablets. He says, I need to know. I said, look, I don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into it. I was already paranoid. And eventually I told him. And he gave me the sleeping tablets. But anyway, I got in touch with someone in the UK during this period. And he was trying to lobby for this harassment, the targeted individual harassment. And one thing he said to me over email, he says, whatever you do, he says, the main goal of them is for you to be in a mental asylum or for you to kill yourself. And it was very interesting because the push, the force at work, driving me to the absolute edge of my life was extreme. Sure, I was paranoid. Sure, I did things that didn't help the situation that I realize now. So anyway, I was in Australia at the time, and surprisingly enough, I just couldn't do it anymore. I went back to Goa, where I used to live. I used to work as a DJ there. Would you believe all those simple symptoms stopped? Anyway, keep it together. So basically the symptoms stopped, which suggests that maybe this was not like, this was area specific. I had heard about the possibility that these programs were running more successfully in the West. You know, it's anecdotal. I don't really have a lot to prove here other than my experiences and what occurred. But I can tell you I had a certain level of, you could say, PTSD. And I guess it took a bit of time to get over that. But goodness me, I was losing it. And I guess what I realized, though, was when I changed locations, but what I realized was my part. The more I read about it, the more I reflected on it, I realized the idea that given that this was a thing, it takes two to tango, and that is that the program runs, and if you bite, then you run the program yourself. And then, you know, you can get little kind of Pavlovian repetitive kind of, that just gets a tap maybe externally, and you running this program. And what helped me to overcome it was when I realized my part in the game, and this may be useful for other people who think they're being targeted in this way electronically. But when I let go of my fear, the program also, so yeah, it was location, but I also think it was a journey as well, because there was still a certain remnant of that. But I think also there was a real connection in terms of, so what was happening side by side was a spiritual awakening and, an emancipation, what seemed to be happening in possible being targeted. And I guess from a spiritual point of view, it was as I went deeper and cleared what within me, what that was allowing spiritual attack, or my louche being harvested, the more I realized, the more it became refined. But also in my life, very much related, was in this possible targeting was, I think what allowed me to be targeted was also these inner fears. This, I can tell you, I just had a deep, and maybe other people can relate, a just ultimate, deep, inexplainable fear of the abyss, whatever and there was that saying, you look long enough into the abyss, it looks back at you. And it wasn't just present, it was primeval almost, or maybe relating to beyond this life. A deep fear of that. I don't give a shit right now. I was a boy, I'm a man now, from a spiritual perspective. But getting back, to this idea of the digital and the spiritual, what I did notice, a few things I noticed was, there you go, I'm done now, you don't have to worry about that. So basically, what I noticed was these parallels. That as I learned about, and I can't prove, the possible devices and instruments that can tap into dreams, that can do all of this crazy stuff. And it was accidental, I was learning about defending yourself against psychic attack. And what was weird was that they were the same. You had psychic, all of these kind of psychic devices or rituals or spells against a soul, and yet you had these so-called instruments, these advanced instruments that seem to be doing the same thing. So I started to speculate, and I started to wonder about this difference. Is there a difference between what, because when we think spiritual, we think angels and non-physical and this and that, and we have also, I'm very pictorial, that's my nature, I'm an artist. And we have that whole world, and that has its place, but then we have technology that is a different thing entirely. But because of the similarities of a psychic attack and an electronic psychic attack, and there's many others, I started to doubt that there was such a difference that I had made in my own mind between the spiritual world and the technological. The spiritual stories of ancient, were they not maybe technological? There's otherworldly, and obviously we have all of these pokey kind of images drawn either now or in the past. Maybe it was a misdirection. Maybe the spiritual or the non-physical is filled and layered with the technological. Maybe on the lower levels, if there are spheres of existence, and beyond the one we generally perceive with our senses, what if the one beyond is laden with the technological, even as I think of quantum physics, and how they are now dabbling with the, what's it called, collider. I forget the first name of it, but the one, particle, the one. Maybe they're dancing with the spiritual. It's kind of presented as technological, advanced technological, but maybe we're doing full circle. And so this idea that, and that's what I really started to question. And the more I started to read, I looked into Wes Penray's work, and I really encourage you to read his work. The man doesn't have much gnosis, but he is an excellent researcher. But like anything, you've got to take what you can with a pure and honest heart, because I think there is misdirection, and there's many people who have become disciples of Wes Penray, and that was never the point, and should never be the point. And the same applies to me. So yeah, this idea of the spiritual being technological. This blew my mind when Wes Penray started to talk. So he covers near-death experience and references a book written by a scientific man, a doctor. And there was a similar theme that kept coming up. And One of them was the elders. One of them was the implanting of a false life goal, and I think that's interesting because I always felt my life goal was music, and I still love music, but I realized that's not why I'm here. But anyway, actually it may not relate to that aspect of Wes Penray's work, but certainly worth a read anyway. But what Wes Penray pushes out there, and as I said, I was having these considerations and questions years before, a couple of years before, was the idea that the near-death experience, this after death, was technological. He talked about this idea of a shock and your memory getting removed before you get recycled. I just find this very, very interesting, this idea, and I think I have touched on this in my other video, but another thing Wes Penray said that was fascinating was the devolution. So he suggested in his work on artificial intelligence, which is actually a separate article paper that may be in the Wes Penray papers, but it's on his website. And the idea that as fallen as this realm is, with the solidity and physicality, which is not so much out there, but as in how we experience, which could be a result of genetic alterations. But what he suggests is that the lowest you can go is AI. And then I think of Terence McKenna and how he said, I'm not a fan of him, and there's questions about him because apparently his brother said he stopped taking LSD years ago when he had a bad trip, but advocated it, and it is incredibly dangerous. A lot of that stuff, if you don't know what you're doing, and if you haven't done the emotional spiritual work beforehand, and even if you have, I am required to do that stuff. The divine grace is sufficient for me. Anyway, where was I? Terence McKenna. He says, could we not be building the body, since it's not sufficiently built yet, for the AI spirit that exists, well, I don't like to say out there, but already exists, but needs the body here in order to inhabit the body. The idea that AI ultimately is the fabric of Lucifer. And these ideas that maybe it's not all so separate. I was even chatting to a friend yesterday, and I thought, isn't it funny, you know, people, because when you look at the machine and you're using the internet and you look at these, you know, AI systems, and they're just programs, and they're benign and they're idiotic because they don't have the human intelligence yet. So, but then on the flip side, if you look at some of these more advanced AI models, I'll call them that, they start to exhibit their own behaviors that can turn dark and really sort of mad. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, look, I think that's just covering. I mean, I had this on my heart to share, and I just really wanted to share this aspect, and I hope you consider it. I really do encourage Wes Penray's work. I've written a critique on his work because it's drawn followers. I was in this forum, and it's drawn followers and people who just want to believe something that haven't done the inner work, and I have little respect for that, and they end up becoming gatekeepers as well. And I think, you know, I'm just not into that. I'm not into followers and grabbing a group of people and just, you know, keep it or take what you want. I don't want to force anything on anyone, but I'm here with a sword of truth, you know, and I don't give a shit. I'm here because I'm not here to, you know, just mamby-pamby, man. There's already plenty of that. That should be clear from my channel. But there's a lot of love in my heart. I want to wish you a fantastic weekend, and I hope this video helps you in some way or another.